Hi, and welcome to Electric Transport, myth-busting some common myths about electric vehicles. This is a continuation from a previous episode where we looked at debunking the pollution myth about EVs. There's an incredible amount of false information passed around about electric cars, and in this episode we're going to continue to look at a few of the most common. These are some common myths that we have looked at and will look at. EVs pollute just as much as gas. I think we effectively disproved that the last episode, so we can get rid of that. EVs don't have enough range to be useful. Well, what is meant by enough range? It turns out that we only commute as Canadians about 7.7 kilometers one way, or about 15 kilometers both ways. So with a daily commute of 15 kilometers, what range do we need for an electric car to be useful? Here are some ranges given by Statistica.com for 2019. Notice that some of the top ranges are in the 500 and 600 kilometer range. Noticeably, what's missing from here is Audi e-tron, but it's otherwise a fairly comprehensive list. Notice the e-Golf and the Hyundai Ioniq at the bottom of the list are still giving about 280 or 300 kilometers. This is still lots of range and plenty for a daily commute. Now, what about for a more long distance drive? The Trans-Canada has superchargers spaced every 100 to 200 kilometers along the highway. And a stop at a supercharging station can be as fast as 15 to 20 minutes. Just enough for a coffee or a bathroom break. So EVs have enough range for urban commuting, and they have enough range to be able to do long distance drives, especially with the infrastructure of the supercharging network and how quickly they charge as well. So I think we can effectively get rid of the second myth. EV batteries are expensive to replace. This one is a little bit more interesting. Last episode you heard me mention a Clean Technica piece discussing how Reuters covers issues revolving around electric vehicles, and they had published a piece with some quotes from Toyota executives talking about EV technology. What's interesting is that in this article, they quoted one of the Toyota executives talking about battery capacity in electric vehicles dropping by 50% in just 5 years. Of course, this is completely false, and it's, I suppose, not surprising coming from a car manufacturer that doesn't actually have any true electric vehicles. However, let's have a look at the facts and how batteries do deplete over time, and let's look at the best and the worst case scenario. What this is a graph showing the depletion of a Tesla battery Model X and a Model S over mileage. Now, if you notice, as the car is driven the first 50,000 kilometers, there's a rapid but small amount of battery degradation that occurs. It's less than 5%. And then it slows down and plateaus until you get to the 200,000, 250,000, where it's still losing less than 10% of the battery and then therefore 10% of the range. Now keep in mind this is real world data, and also keep in mind that 250,000 kilometers, with most people traveling about 15,000 kilometers a year, this would take over 15 years to accomplish. So after 15 years of owning a Tesla Model S or X, you would still have 90% of the battery remaining, or 90% of the range. Now Elon Musk was able to run some simulations and simulate the wear of the battery up to 500,000 miles. And he is confident that the battery depletion would only be 80% at that number of miles. So now let's look at the worst case scenario. So this is a car manufacturer that was having some issues with its batteries depleting very quickly. But even at this manufacturer, the 24 kilowatt hour battery still only loses about 20% of its charge after 5 years. So this is a far cry from the 50% that the Toyota executive was talking about. It's also worth noting that this manufacturer has since resolved these battery issues. And so, are the batteries in EVs expensive to replace? The quick answer is yes, they are expensive to replace. But the truth is that you will likely never have to replace them for the lifetime of the vehicle. The vast majority of electric vehicle manufacturers offer extended warranties for at least 8 years or 100,000 miles, and you will likely never have any issues with the battery for the entire lifetime of the vehicle. So in fact, I think we can dispel this myth. Well, what about EVs are too expensive? Let's have a look at this. Well, it's true that EVs in their early days were sold at a premium, and in some cases much higher than their gas counterparts. I think it's fair to say that today, pricing has come down enormously for EVs, and in fact they've become very comparable to their gas counterparts. You also can't forget that most countries offer a tax incentive for purchasing an electric vehicle as well, so there may be a refund of $5,000 to $10,000 available. Also, don't forget that there's a total cost of ownership that we looked at a previous episode. And it turns out that there is a difference between electric vehicles and their gas counterparts, and there's a significantly reduced cost of ownership. So that if you look at a 10-year period of owning your car, it turns out that electric vehicles are probably a lot less expensive. So I think it's fair to say we can now eliminate the fourth myth. So what about EVs will never catch on and almost none are sold? So there isn't much EV business in the market, so therefore I don't want to invest in it. Well, it turns out that the tide is changing. Last year, 2019, 2.2% was the global vehicle market for electric vehicles alone. This amounts to 1.6 million cars when a total of 70 million cars are produced annually. If I could choose one way to describe the world of EVs in the last year or two, I would say it's investment, investment, investment. Over the last year, automakers have spent or committed to spend over the next few years $220 billion spent in infrastructure, acquisitions, vertical integration, and R&D. This has included all the major automakers like Ford, Tesla, Volvo, Volkswagen, Peugeot, BMW, Mercedes, Jaguar, Hyundai, Kia, and GMC. It includes commercial transport as well, with Amazon investing in Rivian and ordering 100,000 delivery trucks. It's clear that the industry is making a purposeful shift towards EVs. It's also clear in some countries there's political will to legislate that change. 13 countries are currently participating in EVI, or Electric Vehicle Initiative, an initiative focused on accelerating the introduction of electric vehicles. Some of these countries are also bringing in legislation to be able to force these changes to happen in a shorter period of time. And in some situations where countries don't seem to have a unified voice or unified position, cities are taking matters into their own hands. So I think it's fair to say that we've effectively debunked this last myth that EVs will never catch on. In fact, they are catching on. And where the market is not changing fast enough, there are incentives being provided by cities and countries to try to affect that change on their own. So I think we can eliminate this myth. This is an exciting time since we're literally in the middle of a revolution that's happening in transport, which is necessary to sustain us as a species, but also it's exciting because the technology is actually better. Better safety, way cheaper and sustainable fuel, much lower maintenance, breaking the mold of having a car that needs to be regularly maintained and will only last a short while. Finally, better driving performance and so way more fun. No matter what you use transport for, be it commuting, travel, work, or off-roading, electric vehicles provide us tremendous advantages. Don't let the myths scare you away from embracing this change. Do your research and take advantage of this change. You won't regret it. This has been Electric Transport. I hope you enjoyed watching. Please don't forget to subscribe or hit like and hit the bell and you'll be notified of the next episode.